right. Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk College, a podcast about real talk about college experiences. I am so excited to get to talk to one of my favorite students. I'm probably going to say that with, like, why would I interview somebody one of my favorites, right? But one of my favorite students I got to work with. Not only, like, this is one of the few students that I got to work with when I was in the classroom, but then also tutoring after. I know we worked on college applications. I think we worked on SAT stuff as well, or ACT, one of the two, later on. But Lindsay Carpenter. Lindsay is a senior at A&M University in College Station. And Lindsay, would you tell us a little bit about what you're majoring in, that kind of stuff, a little about who you are, and we'll get started.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a senior at Texas A&M University, whoop, and I'm studying applied exercise physiology. I have one more semester to go. It's only an internship, so I'm excited about that. And really, apart from that, I'm hoping to do physical therapy, going to physical therapy school in May. Really pumped about that. I love CrossFit, get to do that as well. Throughout college, I've done that, did it a little bit in high school, even back when Bobby knew me was when I started. But yeah, that's really what I do, what I'm about. It's a ton of fun, and I can't believe it's almost over.
Well, so the CrossFit, you were doing that in high school? Because I knew you did gymnastics. You were a super competitive gymnast in high school. You were doing
I
CrossFit
started
still?
at the end of my sophomore year.
Okay.
So.
Is that about when you stopped doing gymnastics too?
Yeah, I stopped and went like right over. And
so, man, you've been doing CrossFit for 6 or 7 years now.
6, yeah.
You post a lot of stuff on Facebook. You post a lot of stuff on Instagram that blows my mind. Like, I can't believe a human being can do the stuff that you can do. Do you have an Instagram page or anything you're doing like that to curate that stuff to show maybe your cross? I know you're now a certified trainer, right? In CrossFit, or a coach or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then,
correct. Level 1 trainer, I think, is like the official title.
All right. And then
Instagram does not.
Instagram is what?
I wish.
What'd you say about Instagram?
Say that again.
What'd you say about Instagram? I
said they do not pay me, but I wish they did.
Someday you'll be an influencer on there. I was going to ask you about, so you don't have an Instagram really? Do you have like an official Instagram page you're using, or any kind of link like that you're doing? No, I just use my personal account, and I just have fun with it. And so you'll see it just like ebbs and flows of what I'm training, what I'm doing. I just do it all in one. Again, the stuff, the handstand, you did some handstand jumps the other day, and I was like, I didn't know the human body could like move, and that like could actually propel itself up by its elbows. Like, my human body cannot do that. I can promise that. So it's amazing. Well, the physical therapy, can we talk about that then? Because did you know that's what you're going to do when you started college?
It was a hopeful dream that honestly seemed pretty far out of reach. Like, I'm just going to say this to give an answer for all the grad parties and all the family. And it was a passion that I had, that I quite honestly learned. I didn't really know like much about the field, other than what I had experienced in gymnastics, like we kind of talked about. And so there was a lot to learn. There's still a lot to learn. So it was just kind of like, I hope I end up liking it. And luckily enough, I did, but it took a lot of volunteering and experience and asking questions, making connections with people. And so I'm glad that I ended up enjoying it. So it is what I like kind of had my mind towards going in, but I didn't know I'd actually make it this far. So, which now I'm passionate about. I'm like full throttle ahead. And now I'm like, I think it's possible.
So I just realized something else. What I wasn't asking, I'll come back to it in a minute. Related to CrossFit, you said something about volunteering and stuff. Were you volunteering at a like a physical therapy center? What were you doing to get a feel for it?
Say that again. Was I getting a feel for it? Or?
Yeah, for a feel for it. You said you were volunteering. So what were you doing to get a feel for it?
And this is physical therapy, not CrossFit?
Yeah, For physical therapy. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it was interesting. To like get it feel for the field, I did stuff at various clinics. So I did inpatient in a hospital. I did pediatrics. I've done sports medicine. And sports medicine I kind of held on to because I'm working there right now. But in all those places, I mean, I've gotten to see geriatrics. I've gotten to see actually hand therapy, which is technically under occupational therapy, and that's different. But I've gotten to see like a lot, like even dizzy balance, so like neurological physical therapy. And so it kind of I had to be there for a length of time. So I would just go like 4 hours a week. So just once, like one afternoon or morning. And I tried to switch it up to see different patients, see different things. And I would like pick the therapist's brains if it was appropriate to do so in that time. I would watch their evals, kind of like watch, okay, what does this job entail? What's the difference between a physical therapist and a physical therapy like assistant? They're still a therapist. It's just the jobs look different. So do I like what the PTA is doing or do I like what the PT is doing? And I would talk to them about that. What's the difference here? The difference in the fields that almost like the little niches within the field. So like I listed some of them. But that's kind of like what I was doing. And it was really just 4 hours a week for like many weeks so that I could get an appropriate amount of hours to put on my resume. Because if you have 20, like you can get 20 in a week if you wanted to. But if I'm there for months, then that's better. So it was neat because you see the ebb and flow of patients. You kind of see how a clinic works, whether that's in a hospital, whether that's like a private practice or like it's attached to the hospital. So that's kind of what I did to kind of feel out the field. And it took talking to other people that were a little bit ahead of me in that race for physical therapy school, of just like, what do we do? So, I mean, making friends, making connections is everything, because otherwise you're kind of blind. You don't really know what to do, what to ask. So I didn't know. I had no gauge.
Well, that's the first question I want to ask you. Then I have kind of an idea of what it takes to get into a physical therapy school, but you're going to University of Southwestern, is that right?
Yes, UT Southwestern.
UT Southwestern, and that's a pretty prestigious. I mean, it's a very prestigious hospital. I'm assuming that because of that, the physical therapy school was pretty prestigious. What was
Yeah.
What was your process of being accepted into that? What was your process of getting into that PT school?
The process, you said?
Yes, of getting in.
Got you. So applications opened in the summer. So you fill out the applications. I would say like the process kind of starts with everything. So grades matter, references matter. So making those connections, like I said, your job experience, consider having jobs outside of the field. Don't do everything within the field. So CrossFit, that was a big thing I got to use. Of it's still coaching. I got to take that in and out of physical therapy, of my experience in developing people doing that. So I'd say that is actually a big part of the process, is be in organizations, not too many, but like get into one and have fun with it. If you're in a sorority or fraternity, like that's great. Make time to do other things outside of that. Take leadership roles, like own what you're doing. Don't spread yourself thin, because it's not gonna, like, you won't really have much to talk about if you're like, I was just spread really thin. So do what you're wanting to do it well. That was the big part of the process. Application wise, man, you write a ton of essays. So thank you, Mr. Bybee, for all the essay prep and back. I wrote probably around 14 each. Some were paragraphs, some were like a page and a half. Just different schools have different essay requirements. You make a statement of like, why do you want to do PT, is like kind of the skeleton of the question. They kind of enhance it and change it every 2 years. Do all of that. You have to get references. So like physical therapist, professor, having relationships with your professors is important, which kind of stinks because you're in a class of 300. How do you distinguish yourself? Go to office hours. So you do different things like that. And then it's waiting games. What?
The second person who's really stressed, go to office hours. When you have those classes of 300 students, make sure you go to office hours.
Yes. It's so easy. 30 minutes out of your day. You have the 30 minutes. Look at your social media hours on your phone. You have 30 minutes. Like, I promise. So go to those hours. It's helpful. You can even talk to the professor pick their brain. They enjoy it. They're a person. They have their PhD in whatever they're doing probably, and they're awesome. They're a great resource. And so that was fun, and it makes class a little bit more fun because you kind of know the professor, and so that was cool. And then it's a big waiting game. After you submit your applications, it's kind of tedious with transcripts. I had an Excel spreadsheet that just kept me in line of due dates and cost and all of that. And then you interview if you, fingers crossed, get an interview. So that's the coolest. And then they'll let you know. And I mean, some people hear back September, October, apply earlier. It is better. So kind of get your ducks in a row and then go through the application process, turn it in early. Hopefully you'll hear back in the fall, but some people may not still right now hear back until March, April, May, so because as people start declining and choosing different schools, they open up more spots for the interviewees to take. So you're just kind of on this list, wherever you stand on that list. You might get in first round, you might be on the wait list. There is no shame being on the wait list. It's just competitive. Mm-hmm. So if you got an interview, you have a great application.
So if you started that application process, so you started that application process summer before your senior year of college. It starts that back then, because I think some people, don't get that. They don't get that there's whole nother application process that goes in. Were there GRE? Did you do the GRE? Did you have any kind of testing as well?
Yes. Yes, the GRE.
Okay.
Which I'm going to be honest. So studying for the GRE, so SAT was go, 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 go. It feels like you're applying to college again. I took my GRE after a test week, big mistake, but I got the score I needed. And I'm just going to say the GRE is not what's going to be the distinguishing factor. Get the score you need to get. There's hundreds of vocab words you need to know. The way it's formatted, it felt near impossible. I thought I was failing the test the entire time. And I did well. So I was like, okay, you out of anyone knows that I am not the best at vocabulary. So that was tough, but I did it. I did what I needed to do. And so it's almost like going through college, you're doing your things. It was helpful. I kind of learned, okay, what is the test? Let me get a feel for the test, take a few practice tests. I took 4 exams before the GRE that week, and then Hail Mary attempt took it in November of my junior year, because I was like, I just got to take it, get it done with. And then if I need to take it again, I will. But super scoring is a thing for physical therapy school and graduate programs. So you have to look into, sometimes it's a gamble taking it twice. And it might actually reflect poorly. So different schools are different. Some don't care, some do. I was fortunate, but I would say don't honestly kill yourself over studying for the GRE. It almost is like a puzzle that is just you'll do fine. It'll work out.
It's been 10 or 15 years since I took a GRE. Is it still a deal where you schedule your GRE whenever you want to? So it's not like the SAT or ACT that there are these 7 times a year, you have to build around those. You can go in and schedule at a test center and take it whenever it fits your schedule. Is that still accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So amazing.
And are they still doing the thing where the first couple of questions then are, the questions get more difficult as you go, or is that still a thing?
So they kind of do what I heard. Again, this is kind of I didn't have anyone really prepping me for it. I just had word of mouth. I heard that it's if you are answering correctly, they might get harder.
Yeah.
And then they might throw an easier one in there if you're missing. So it just kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. And they might throw you a bone every now and again, I guess maybe to build your confidence. But the whole thing just felt
you can kind of psych yourself out too. Cause
it kind of seemed harder. Say that again.
I think you kind of psych yourself out because you're going along and you feel like the questions are getting harder, but then one gets easier and you're like, wait, did I just screw up? I just bomb my test, and then it gets easier. And then you kind of think yourself through that. So, how did you choose UT Southwestern as your PT school? What was made there? If you want to tell other schools that you chose that you looked at, but how did you, let me back up 1 second with that question. How did you decide which PT schools to apply to?
Yeah. Big things for me, honestly, it was if I will be going to a location that I absolutely do not want to go to. Sorry, Texas Tech, great program. I actually was fond of the program. didn't want to go to Odessa, Amarillo, or Lubbock. I was like, I'm not moving out there. My boyfriend's not going to move out there. My family didn't really want it either. So I kind of honestly, I was like, where are places I'm willing to compromise for location for the program? And that's kind of where I started. But then also things to include and incorporate. One, cost is another thing. Like I didn't apply to any private programs because I knew I wouldn't be able to pay for it. So nixed those immediately. But then also, what is their program style, like format of teaching? There are some, I'm not gonna like name them, but there are like some schools that is a joke, and the therapist at the office I work at, they call it Teach Yourself University. So they're like, yeah, you'll get your license, but like you're going to teach yourself everything. And that's just them and their opinion. I don't know much about these programs they were talking about. Some of them were private programs. So I was like, I'm not going to apply to those anyways. But it's how do the courses kind of intertwine? Some do like kind of like college where, so UT Southwestern is one, like all 5 courses, you're taking them all at once for that semester. Some it's like in a 12-week span and you're doing like these 2 classes for 3 weeks, this class for 2 weeks, and so you're kind of building out your, whatever you want to call it, like your list of classes that you have to take. It looks insane because it's 7 classes, but they're like, no, you're only taking 2 at a time and you're doing them every single day. They build on each other. Then you do clinicals, then you do this. So that was some other things too of like, what do they highlight about their programs? So like UNT highlights that they do this rural education course of like bringing physical therapy to rural places. For me, I don't live in those areas. Like I didn't feel like I had a strong heart for it, but I thought it was really interesting. And I thought it was neat because like even Bryan College Station, it's not technically rural, but people from rural places have to drive an hour and a half to get the care that they need. And in my job, I'm like having to schedule them out and call them and like think about those things where you're driving an hour and a half to come get care, but you have to be here 5 times a week. Like that's hard. So then in applying to UT and talking with them, I was like, that's really interesting. Maybe I should look into this more. With UT Southwestern, all of their faculty members are still practicing. There's also practicing clinicians. And I thought that was awesome because they're kind of keeping up with the times on new like treatments. And they're just, their education, they're teaching us, but then they're practicing what they're doing. And their student ratio to like professor, it was a small one. And then they had like a mentorship program where I'll have the same faculty member as my mentor throughout my time at UT Southwestern with like 4 or 5 other students. And so they kind of, it's like you're advising, like your advisor basically, but it's one of the faculty members. So you have that relationship. So that was some programs. It's like, it's you and 75 other students. Do you want to be one of 75 or you want it more intimate? What do their labs look like? What clinical experience do they offer? So it was, and then honestly, you're going to sit down and take your licensure exam. Everyone's going to take the same exam. It's how do you want to get there, right? What do you want your experience to look like on its way? So like UT Southwestern has this John Mark camp where we work with kiddos with some disabilities, and that's really cool. I'm like, oh, this would be a neat thing, but it's just 1 semester. So it's not like a huge miss out out of going to UNT, so there's like small things, but it's how do you learn best? How, like, do you want to have those relationships with professors or do you mind being one of 75? Do you mind getting split up to all these different locations and not knowing where you're going to go? So there's like a lot of different things you just look into that I still am like, I don't really know that much. And in the interviews, I learned a ton getting to talk with them. Well, that was long-winded, but
no, that's awesome. That's exactly what I think people want to know, because like I said, I can talk about what I think it is, but you just did it. You just did it. You mentioned UNT and Texas Tech specifically in there. Did you get, you must have applied to both of those. Did you get accepted to multiple PT schools or how did that process work?
Yeah. So I got interviews to so Texas, what is it? TWU does not do interviews. I haven't heard back from them. No idea. But I applied to Texas State, got an interview with them. UTMB, got an interview with them. Texas Tech, got an interview with them. UNT, UT Southwestern, got interviews with all of them. So that was amazing. UNT and UT Southwestern were my first 2 interviews. I got accepted to both, but they were my top 2 schools. And so I was like, awesome because I kind of am done interviewing now. And I declined Texas Tech almost immediately because I really realized then when I got the other interviews, I was like, I'm really not going to end up going there. So I was like, I'll give that spot to someone else. That's another thing is like, I'm taking someone else's spot right now. So I instantly declined and I was like, no. And then same with the other interviews. As soon as I found out I had been accepted, I declined all of them, which they were supposed to be this month. All of my other ones. So it was a lot of interviews. But I declined back in October. So hopefully those spots were opened up for others. But yeah, so that was like big in my decision. So those were like the top ones that I had on my mind that I really got into.
So in the application process, like what did people like it's GRE? I think that's people, one thing people miss out on is it's just, you have to have a minimum score, right? It's not that it's not like the SAT where, you have this perception that if I can get a 1600, then I'll pick it and I'll get in anywhere I want, which isn't true. On the GRE, it's, schools will say, this is the minimum score you have to apply. And then once you have that minimum score, it really doesn't matter. Like it's everyone has that score. That's all they care about. GPA, is that the next thing then that they look at? Or is it just a minimum GPA requirement?
So I would say GPA, honestly, and GRE are the things that are going to open the door for them to consider everything else. Of like, all right, her GPA is like above this number. So like typically what they say competitive is over 3.75, which I'd say majority of people like that's going to be where they're at. Some don't have that. And they still get it, but like that is to be competitive. My advisor, my freshman year said, you're going to want to aim for like a 3.75, just so you know. And I was like, okay. So like, it was like, okay, I know how hard I need to work. I'm going to do what I need to do, prioritize those things. It opens the door. And then it comes down to experiences. Are your references personal? Like, or was it like a generic slap letter? So it's like, ask someone that actually knows. That's why I focus on building those relationships when you come in. Like, don't sit on your hands for 2 years and then play catch up the last 2 years and then hold your fingers like crossed that you're going to suddenly have it all together. But some people choose gap years. Some people don't get in their first round. I know one of my good friends, he applied 4 years and he's phenomenal. A great guy, great experience. It just wasn't happening yet. So he got a ton of experience, and I would honestly bargain he is more prepared going to PT school than so many people just because he worked in the field for so long. So I'm just saying like no shame in any of those things, but those like GPA, GRE, it really just opens the door. But like I have friends with 4.0s that haven't heard back from it. I do not have a 4.0, but like they haven't heard back from schools yet. I don't know why, but like, so I'm just saying like it opens doors, but it's not the end all be all. Okay. So don't be discouraged if you have a 3.5, like it's not the end of the world. If you have a 3.2, like again, still not the end of the world. Like you might have to retake courses. I won't lie, but people do that. They take a gap year, retake courses. Like there's no shame in taking your time, figuring it out, working in the field. If you want to change over to nursing or PA or, it's like, if you're going to like really do this forever, it's okay if it takes you 5 or 6 years on the front end. It's an investment. So
you majored in applied exercise. Was that your major the whole way through? And
yes.
Do most of the people who major who did have is there a preferred major if you're going to apply for PT school? Is there a major they would prefer to see?
I would honestly argue I don't think there is. Okay. Because as long as you have your prereqs, so yeah, as long as you have your prereqs required for PT school, sometimes having a different major, it almost is beneficial because you learned other things than the rest of the application pool, right? So some people do psychology and they get their prereqs. They might have to take some extra courses that like don't quite fit. I would say like applied exercise physiology at A&M, there's motor behavior too. Like there's kinesiology is like my main degree. And then there's concentrations. So there's like 5 or 6 of them. That's one of the concentrations. Motor behavior is another great one that people do. What was good about applied exercise physiology was my lab experience. I got to work with firefighters and policemen doing stress tests and working with equipment that a lot of people don't have experience with until they get into graduate school. So that was really awesome. I was very excited about that. And that's only our concentration gets to do that. We also took exercise of physiology. We took like exercise protocols and prescriptions. And so ECGs, very familiar with those now. But it was tailored courses where at some PT schools, they would say, this would be helpful for you to have. That was built into my degree plan that I didn't know it would benefit me. I just was doing my degree plan. So that ended up being cool. So kinesiology is a great one. You can do biology, you can do chemistry, you can do psychology. People do those things, but I would say you might have to seek out different courses that are going to be prereqs. Like sociology was not in my degree plan. Some schools I had to kick off my list because I didn't have it.
Okay.
Didn't know.
So it's sounding like
I didn't look into it.
Sounds like A&M has done a really good job of looking at, like, if a lot of our graduates want to go to PT schools, what are the classes we need to have that PT schools provide? And like, it's a dynamic that the postgraduate does. You made a comment earlier, you're not wanting to go to private schools. Like, you knocked private schools off your list. Was that just a cost consideration, a structure consideration? Why did you knock private schools off your list?
Honestly, it was strictly cost, because I looked at the cost and I was like, there is no way this will ever happen. And so I honestly didn't want to look at the program and love it and then like mourn that loss or like sell my kidneys for the school. So I was like, I'm going to go a little closer that I can do.
if it's not getting too personal, I mean, do you have an estimate, like how much does UT Southwestern PT school estimate it's going to cost? It's a 2-year program, right?
It's like 31 months. So a little over 2 years, 2 years, 7 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About how much have they estimated how much it's going to cost?
Yeah. So UT Southwestern, it's going to be like so they take into account living costs as well. I'm going to live at home for a little bit just to save on rent. So shout out, but they estimate like $42,000 a year for UT Southwestern. Obviously that last little 7-month split is not as much. I think UNT was closer to like the 32,000. Mm-hmm. So it's like $10,000 cheaper. Like that was significant. So that was like kind of like choosing between the two. I was like, this is going to be a sacrifice, but I like really love this program. So I think I'm going to go for it. Cool. And the other programs, I think they tend to sit around that like $34,000 range a year.
Okay. So can I ask, I mean, are you going to do loans? Are you going to be working? Do you already have money set aside to pay for it? What's the plan as far as paying for it?
Yes. So I was fortunate to get a scholarship for undergrad. And so that was about a year of school I didn't have to pay for. So I'm able to put that towards PT school. Cool. And then also my family, some of my extended family, actually, they're like paying for my school.
Very good. So you're going to,
I mean, we might take out some loans and stuff, build credit, but I am so fortunate.
That is good. Yeah. So coming out of college a little bit, I talked to the student yesterday who's got 6 figures of debt already and still has 6 months or so to go. And is planning on now law school. So she's committed. She's like, that's what I'm going to have. Are you going to be having much debt when you graduate? Or did you have to do many loans on undergraduate?
No, I won't have any debt graduating.
Good for you, dude. That is
so awesome. That's great.
Yep. That is so cool.
I know.
It's rare nowadays. It's really rare. Okay, can we talk about A&M then? Like, was A&M your first choice school? Was it the only school you applied to? How did you decide to go to, what I call the devil's country, but other people refer to it differently? What made you decide to go to Texas A&M?
So I think A&M was not my actual top choice. I don't know if you remember that whole process. I wanted to go to UT. And I think honestly, it was because my brother was at A&M and I didn't want to like do what he was doing. And my dad was always like, you can do more than he was just being stupid in college. So my dad was like, you're better than him, whatever. So I associated that with, and don't go to the same school as him. A&M's phenomenal. I love it now. So I got slapped in the face. But so yeah, Texas or whatever, UT was like my first choice. I did not get in. And so I really didn't want to go to OU. And I'd gotten to a neat program actually at Penn State, but then I was like, I don't want to fly home every time I want to come home. So I was glad I actually ended up not going there, because it was nice to be kind of like just, yeah, I don't know. Texas is big, but they're like, I had friends like going to Baylor and UT and all around. So it's been fun to be close-ish. And I'm far enough away that my parents can't just like drop in, but also like I can go home for the weekend and it's not costing me a ton. So honestly, my ultimate decision with A&M was kind of like okay, fine. Like, I don't really want to go to OU. I don't really want to do this. And I didn't get into UT, so I guess I'll go to A&M. And like, I was actually upset about that, which was very bratty of me. But now looking back, I loved that everyone I knew that like had gone to A&M, that kind of was in the same boat I was, even ended up loving it. And I don't honestly think I did much research into anything. So I was kind of poor in my college prep. I kind of like looked into schools, and my brother had gone there. So I had like been on campus. I liked the feel of it. I liked College Station and Bryan. I thought like it just seemed quieter, oddly, than Dallas and Southlake kind of felt. So I just like the feel, but honestly about the school, and I just knew it was big. I knew my classes would be big. I didn't care that much. So I think I just kind of went into it with faith, hoping it would like be okay. And it was phenomenal.
Did all three of you end up going to A&M then?
Yeah.
Your brother went, did your sister go to A&M? She graduated from A&M too, right? So all three of you ended up going to A&M. Okay.
All three of us.
All right.
Who would have thought?
Hey, so Kim has this picture of herself when she got her ring, and it sounds like the research process was kind of the same for you, right? That she did the same thing. When she went to this was, oh my gosh, she would have been doing this in like 97, where she went out. She was planning on going to Abilene Christian, and then her high school soccer coach said, why don't you check out A&M and go do a tour? And she got on campus and she was like, oh my gosh, this is where I want to go. This is where I have to go. So she ended up going to A&M. She was in the she got a degree in kinesiology as well. And so, yeah, it's really cool. So the path, and it's funny what you say, because it's one of the things I try to tell people a lot of times is, look, you may not love what you hear back, but the process is going to work to help you find a school where you can thrive, where you can do well. And so, the research process. Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to run through my questions here to see what else. Oh, when I haven't asked, I've been meaning to ask this. I haven't. You're the first person I've asked this. So, what were the things you thought in high school? Like, people told you this is what's going to matter, and this is what's going to matter, that didn't really matter. Or like looking back, you're like, that wasn't as big a deal as they told me it was going to be.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. I like literally was writing down things of like high school versus college before we did this. This is a funny one. So in high school, everyone always said, your professors are not gonna da, 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 da. Like, I think almost all of my professors sent emails and they all say sent from my iPhone at the bottom. In class, people have brought their dogs to class and the professors are like, yeah, well, that's that. So I think professors are a lot more laid back, and it's so funny. It's like so many stories of just ridiculous things, of even professors saying things. And I think I just realized I had this idea coming in that professors were going to be untouchable, that they were going to be pretty intimidating. And I think more than anything, I realized that there are people passionate about what they're doing. They want to teach you if you are willing to accept that. And if you're not, that's on you. They're not going to go the extra mile to make sure you're good. You need to make the extra mile to like come to them for help, because they're not going to help 250 students that don't come to class. Mm-hmm. They're like, that sucks. So that's the difference. I'm going to be honest. That's if you have that 89.4, that person that never did anything for that and then asks, can you please bump it up to a 90? They're going to say that sucks. I actually don't know who you are. But if you're like showing that effort, you're coming in, I think like they're going to be more willing to bump you up. Like so things like that happen. So that was definitely one thing where I was like, everyone in high school always said that. So that was kind of like a joke, but I bet tons of people would agree on. I think Southlake, obviously that's the only school I went to, particularly about the competition in grades, in GPA. I'm like, once you get to college, no one's flaunting their national merit crap anymore. So congrats for you. You know, no one cares about who was the quarterback. No one cares, like all of those things that everyone is fighting for in social status in high school. Like, again, you knew me in high school. I wasn't on a sports team. I wasn't really in any clubs. Like, I did like pals and I did things like that. But like, I could argue I was a nobody in the midst of the popular crowd. I had my friends. I had my fun. But I'm almost glad I didn't kill myself over it, because it is a clean slate when you walk on this campus of thousands of people that do not care who your friend group was. It's like people come in cocky about it, and then it's like, sorry, that means nothing. And you're a high school hero, and that's it. It's like,
don't wear your leather jacket on the college campus. Your leather jacket needs to stay at home, you know. So I tell people, I was telling a student just a couple weeks ago, I was like, you know, your SAT score seems really important right now. June of 2022, your SAT score is no longer important. Like no one is going to ask about it again. Now there's out there process, like, well, how's your, so there's these that are like, but as far as school, once you're in the campus, you know, it's a clean slate. One of the questions I have, though, I have a few friends that I talk with who are college professors. And one of the things teachers in high school always say is, you know, there's no late work. There's no late work forgiveness in college. If you don't have it in, they're just going to give you a 0 and they don't care. And I'm mocking the voice of the teacher, using my teacher voice when I used to say things like that. I know Lindsay Carpenter never in her life ever had a late assignment. Like there's never been a missed assignment, but you may have friends who did. So what's that process been like if you start to struggle in a class, if you're missing an assignment or something like that happens?
So I would say, again, like so honestly, I would say like they're actually fairly lenient. Like if it's honestly typically like majority of the class is struggling with something and it's very clear, like, and we as a class, again, like we would have group messages, like, can someone email and maybe ask if they would move the deadline? And sometimes the professors would be like, oh, this is kind of a lot of work. I'm gonna give you guys an extra 2 days, you know? So I would honestly say my professors were fairly generous of like extending deadlines far more than I needed. But it was helpful. It was great. Like, especially if I would have test week and then they would move a deadline and I was like, oh, praise God. Because even in the kinesiology department, like 1 week, everyone had 4 tests. And one of our professors goes, you know what? The lab's due next week. Y'all, good luck on your tests. So like, it was things like that. I think moving up out of the kind of quote weed out classes, professors kind of start doing you solids and they're like, ooh, that does kind of sound stressful. We'll move it. No big deal. So I honestly think it was far more lenient. My sister, this was actually really neat and you know, I talked to you about this, but everyone listening, like she struggles a lot with mental health and she was very honest with this professor. It was a small class. And she went to office hours all the time, and needed help in this class. And just was having a rough week, emailed the professor and was like, I'm having a rough week. I'm telling you right now, like, I'm not going to be able to get this essay to you until like Monday. And the professor said, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. I will accept it on Monday, no penalty. And so like, one, shout out to that professor, but like that, I was so happy for her because pressure was able to take off. And like I said, professors are humans, and her having a relationship with that professor, the professor was like gracious and being like, hey, you know what? Like, I believe you. I don't think you're finessing me. You work hard. So it paid off to have that relationship. And so like late work and stuff, there is going to be late work. They won't accept things. And if they extend the deadline and you still turn it in late, you're getting a 0. Like that's the other thing is they're harsh. Whenever they say, they mean it. So don't take advantage of the grace that they give because they're equally as like, I gave you a day. So I'm sorry, you know, and then they're not going to bump your grade there. So it's a give and take. And that's where, I mean, do the work. My God, you have time. I promise you have
time. People don't realize like like high school, you're driving through you have these 8 classes. It's all this time, even though like you were on a block schedule. So you only had 4 classes a day, but you had 8 classes you're responsible for. You're going to have 5 classes and you're going to pick your schedule and you're going to those classes for 3 hours a week. So it's, you know, it's literally 15 hours of class per week. But what other, so I asked, what did things that they stressed that it turns out, hey, there was some room. What are things you wish you would have focused on in high school that would have paid off for you in college? If you could do over, you do it over.
I think, I don't know. I think I realized, I think this is a part of growing up and maturing and getting better with time management. But I think I realized how much free time I actually did have. And I think I just stressed about everything. And for myself, like, again, you knew me in high school. I think I just stressed way too hard for almost no reason. It was big to me at the time, but I wish I could tell myself now, hey, don't sweat the small stuff. Like, it is actually small stuff. I wish I would have focused on study habits. And instead of, I feel like as a whole, you might be able to attest to this, it always felt like everyone was almost working harder of how can I make this as easy as possible to get by, cheating, whatever that meant. And instead of like actually just learning how to learn, right? Like, no one in high school is thinking about, how do I learn best? What is good for me to study? Like, no one thinks about that. It's just like, get the grade, get the grade, get the grade. And I think almost as a whole, Southlake is very performance driven. It did not matter at what cost did that take, right? And it's almost like the people that are going to do well are going to do well. The people that are going to do poorly will do poorly. But this group of like, you're going to do well. And then coming to college, people slip through the cracks hard, because guess what? Now you have to work, and people snitch on you in college. You will get in trouble. You will get an F star. Like, that happens. And so you're playing this gamble, and I'm like, quit working harder to finesse the system, play the game. I'm like, actually just learn how to learn. And if you're enjoying what you're doing, hopefully you'll want to learn it for real. So I wish I would have like Miss Lowry showed me amazing study habits. Love her. And it is things that I actually carry to this day. And I send her pictures of my notes, and I'm like, you taught me this, in writing essays and in reading your class. People are always like, oh, like, you're a decent writer. And I'm like, your class was the class that I actually enjoyed reading, and I enjoyed writing the essays. And I learned different things that I take with me to this day. Funny one, I wish I would have read more. Because I think that would have helped my vocabulary in college. And you read a ton in college, and I never read a lick in high school. And even just for fun books, I think I've learned a lot in reading books. I've read more in college than I have in 21 years of my life combined. Well, but I remember we had to read so much for your class, and I actually enjoyed it. Why did I hate reading?
That was the year we started trying to put a lot of choice into it. Like we tell English teachers a lot of times, and I'm taught working English, I'm like, no student ever fell in love reading Scarlet Letter for the first time. Like, that's not the book that made them just suddenly love reading. That's a book you have to work your way up to. Let's put it in CrossFit terms, right? If I walked into the CrossFit gym tomorrow and tried to do the handstand jump thing you were doing the other day, I'm going to break my damn neck. That's not going to work for me. I'm going to have to build up to that. So stop giving them a Scarlet Letter when they haven't really read. And that's what we talk about. Fake reading and playing school. I used to call it the race to the bottom. Like, what's the minimum I have to do to get the maximum grade? And I'd have these 16-year-olds who would tell me, wasn't that how, work smarter, not harder? Isn't that how the world works? And I'm like, well, yeah. Well, the thing you're missing is work, right? You're not working at all. You're trying to get as much as possible without doing anything. And so, but you said that. I was going to ask you about, so I just wanted to catalog a little bit, see if I've got everything that Lindsay Carpenter does. Probably should have started with this. So you play piano, you play guitar, you sing, and I'm not talking like I play guitar, but I do it upstairs in our game room when only the boys are there, right? So by the way, you should see the little guy play drums. He's playing drums, Lindsay. It's unreal. And the big one is playing piano and doing really well.
Let's go.
So
awesome.
You do those three things: sing, piano, guitar. Well, not just like I do, but you do it in front of people. And then you also do art. You're also doing paintings and stuff, right?
Yes.
What were you doing all of that? And how, well, you were probably doing the piano and the guitar and stuff. I think we maybe even played. Did you come in at that group we had playing guitar at lunch sometimes?
Um, I don't know. So I left early
Okay.
because I did the gymnastics deal. So I didn't have lunch at school. I don't remember.
Okay.
Or maybe
Yeah.
I think I did with y'all. I don't think at the senior high I didn't have lunch.
And then, so, were you doing all, were you doing the art in high school as well?
I think so, like paintings and stuff with our GT projects was actually kind of like when I realized I actually really like painting, because I would always choose to do something like that. And that's honestly kind of what started it. I was like, oh, painting's kind of fun. And I was just like, eh. And then my dad was like, oh, I'll get you painting things. But it really wasn't till college that I did it as a like chosen pastime. So like even yesterday, I sat with a friend for 4 hours listening to music and painting, and that's what we did. So I think college, or excuse me, high school started it a little bit, but then really took it in college just because I needed something different to like stimulate my brain.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, are you reading anything? So you talked about reading a second ago. Are you reading anything right now that you really love, and you're something that you've read like for fun that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I actually, it's funny, I have it right here on my nightstand. It's called, let's see, y'all, you're gonna laugh, but that's fine. So I'm like doing this thing with this girl. She's married. I'm dating my boyfriend, right? And so she's like, read this book. It's actually awesome. And it's like, it's called The Sacred Search. I don't know if you can see it, by Gary Thomas. And so it's just good. It's kind of like we read the book, we talk about it. And so she's kind of just like talking with me on like, okay, like choosing a spouse, all of that. Like, how do you do that? Do it well. And then I'm a Christian. So like reading books like this, I think it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And just as helpful. And so even like I read a ton of books kind of like that. I have one called Captivating, people might have heard of. That one, was it Captivating? Yeah. That one was really good. And there's actually one like for men. So that one's like for women. There's one for men as well. And those kinds of books I've like enjoyed, of just like, it almost puts words to like things that you see a lot, things that you feel, and you're like, I don't know why this is a thing, or like what's important in choosing a person you want to marry forever. Like, I don't no idea. And or like you kind of do, but anyways, just like having older than me that's married, like speaking into my life in that area. And then like reading a book, we talk about it. Do I take everything as the truth? No. But I'm like, oh, this is a helpful perspective that I may not have had without reading this book. So it's like talking with people. It's usually those kinds of books where it almost seems like that person is talking to you.
I think that's what's
and then it's like, I'm not going to take it as end all be all, but it's like perspective.
When you said you started enjoying reading, I wish we could put that in high school classes, like where you could just talk about a book, like what it means and stuff. But instead, everything has to be grade associated, right? Because we can only work with grades. And so I have to score your Socratic seminar, and you have to make 5 insightful comments and ask 2 insightful questions, which turns out, I found out later, means that, I kind of knew this was going on, because it was always the same questions coming up all of the time, that people were just going to Schmoop. I don't mean you, but people would just go to Schmoop and Spark Notes and kind of figure out what were good questions to ask and make sure they asked those. I did find out, you little turds, that, I was like, I thought I was so clever. I said, well, if you're reading your book on your phone, you need to hold up a picture of the cover. Well, one of your classmates ratted you out that all you guys did was get a JPEG of the picture of the cover of the book. And everyone had that JPEG on their phone so they could hold up and not lose 5 points, whatever I counted off for not having, you little twerps. But it's that whole playing school.
Wait, I actually know, so I'm clean, but I totally did use Spark Notes. Like, probably half the time.
Yeah.
So.
No, but it's the stuff.
But also sometimes to understand what I was even freaking reading.
Well,
because half the time I was like, I didn't pay attention when I was reading that.
Yeah. Well, if you're reading The Road, or you're reading, something like that, you definitely have to have someone to help you out with it. But yeah. I wish we could have just more conversations about books and stuff in high school, but everything's so grade driven that you have to do that. You have to hold people accountable. Yeah. Why not? Well, Lindsay, this has been awesome. My gosh, such good stuff, such great information today. Any things any questions you have, anything I've left out that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I'm curious on your, again, kind of like that high school, college kind of deal. Like what were some things you noticed as a high school teacher that you felt like, gosh, they are so just obsessed about these things and they're going to figure out it means nothing. Like you're in a further stage of life than all of we are, than even I am in this moment. And so I'm just curious, like what you saw and what you were just like, if they just knew this, like, what are those things for you?
It's the, you probably heard me and Miss Otto talk about it a few times. It's the grade grubbing, that the grades just aren't going to matter. Yes, for getting into certain schools. And I argue with peers that are in the tutoring and the college prep world about this too. I have one good friend who says, no, if you want to go to this school or this school, the only thing you can do is that, you have to go, if you want a job at Goldman Sachs, then you need to do that. If you want to be an investment banker, you need to go here. And he's not wrong. He's definitely right. My counter to that is the only road to success in life is not through investment banking. The only road, there's so many roads to success in life. And really it's about figuring out, like, again, we're so driven. That's why I started this podcast. Is so far I've interviewed, a student who just graduated with a degree in finance and accounting, who literally said, I hate math because I did accounting myself, did a job at Fidelity. A student yesterday who took 2 years off of college to work on herself in the middle of college. Like she went for a year or two and then took 2 years off and is now back. And I interviewed a former student. I'm interviewing a former student next week who is a president of a company in Houston. And I'm really excited about this because when I talked to him, I was like, hey, I really want to talk to you about your process, because he started off at a community college. And Devlin came back and said, Bobby, I don't think I'm the one you want to talk to, because I didn't even finish college. And I was like, no, you're exactly who I want to talk to, because his company is like, it's been rated as one of the top 10 places to work in Houston for like the last 5 years. Like he is doing stuff right. And that's the thing I try to express to kids is, here's the thing. I've worked on this metaphor lately. Like we've created this idea for college admissions where you had 2 cups of grades, really good grades, and a half a cup of a good test score, a couple of teaspoons of extracurricular activities. You stir it up really good and you bake it for 4 years. And then it comes out as this beautiful college admissions cake, right? That's what happens. And it's just, we're selling like that golden ticket and stuff. And if we could help kids figure out how to work, because what's happening right now during this pandemic with online learning and remote learning and the amount of copy and paste education that's going on, grades will mask it, because everyone's grades are good right now, because no teacher, you say professors are people, teachers are people, and they're struggling. The things we're asking teachers to do right now is crazy. But all of these, I want to talk to parents right now, man, their grades are awesome. And I'm like, yeah, their grades are awesome because they're not being asked to do nearly as much rigorous stuff as they would have otherwise. The teacher is having, like, what they're doing in Carroll ISD is batshit crazy. They are asking teachers to simultaneously teach online and in person at the exact same time, deliver the quality thing. And then you've got these kooky parents who are off to the side, who are recording with their camera, recording it. And they're telling themselves, right? Because this is the logic of it. They're saying, we'll record the lesson and then the kid can go back and watch the lesson later, which is bullshit. No 17-year-old is going to go back and rewatch that. No, mom, I'm good. I got it. Right. And then what ends up happening is if the teacher says something or flubs something because they're on stage for 90 freaking minutes, if they do say something, well, now they're going to cut it. I mean, you may have heard the story, what happened to me my first year in Carroll, whenever a group of kids made up a fake Facebook page for me and called it Bibby's Bitches. And I got it. Do you remember that? And so I got a call from PJ, from the principal, and he said, do you have a Facebook page? And I was like, no, at that time I was not on Facebook at all. And he's like, yeah, can you come down here for a minute? I got a couple of questions. It's my first year on campus. And so I'm in there like, yeah, what's up? Well, some parent had stood over had walked by, and the parent and the student was reading the screen, and the teacher and the parent was like, what is that? And so they took all these screenshots and they sent it to PJ and they said, Mr. Bybee is encouraging this, or this is we want to get to the bottom of this. And what they had done is they had taken some of the things, because I said things that were a little edgy at times. And they took some of the things that I said completely out of context, and this parent was like, I can't imagine a context where that would have been acceptable. I was like, well, it's a little bit about building relationships. I didn't say any using the off-color language, but there was one we were working on the floor. And so I warned the students, look, because this was back in the baggy jeans day when everybody's butt crack could be sticking out. And I was like, if I walk up to you and are like, hey, coin slot, I'm telling you, pull your pants up. That's like the nicest way I can do it. But I'm telling you, pull your pants up because I can see your butt crack. And I don't know of a nice way to say it. And I don't want everybody walking by laughing at you because your butt crack's sticking out. But this parent's like, I can't imagine. Oh, I told a story about a principal over in Fort Worth. And the principal got in trouble, got suspended and reassigned because a parent complained because apparently he was pinching boys' nipples in the hall. And I can 100%, like I said to the class, I can't imagine a situation where I'm motivating a kid by pinching his nipple, right? And the parent legitimately quoted me and said, I cannot imagine a time that the word nipple would be appropriate in the classroom. I'm like, well, let me show you a time when nipple would be appropriate. And like, it's not an inappropriate thing. I wasn't like, So there's stuff like that. That's what's going on for teachers. So back to this, like what's happening right now. If I had a thing to say is that grades do not measure learning. Grades and learning correlate, but they are not causal, and grades do not measure learning. And so much of the time we think that because the student's making great grades, they must be learning the material. And the thing I love about an SAT or an ACT, when used correctly, is that it shows us, hey, the student has great grades, but they haven't really learned the material. I hear all the time, like, well, the test is biased, or the test doesn't measure what you've learned. Yeah, the test does measure what you learned. Like, I know for a fact I'm 30 pounds overweight. I weigh 209. I need to weigh 175 or so, right? I know that. If I get on the scale and the scale says I weigh 209, that's not the scale's fault. Like, that's an objective freaking measurement that I'm 30 pounds overweight. So if I have this 4.0 that says my mommy says I'm awesome, but then I take the SAT, it's not that you're a bad, and this is the one that drives me nuts. Well, they're just a bad test taker. No, they haven't learned the material. That's the reality of it. Yes, there are people who, I imagine Heather has some anxiety when she goes in to take standardized tests. You have that dialogue that you tell
for sure.
And you give yourself those dialogues and stuff. That totally happens 100%. But when you have a 4.0 and then a 1200 SAT, it's not that you don't test well. It's that you haven't learned the material well enough that you can handle it whenever it's a stressful moment. And that really is what they're measuring. So if I had something I wanted to tell students, it's something you already said. It's quit worrying about the grade, worry about the learning. If you focus on the learning, the grade takes care of itself. But so much of the time we're looking for the quick fix or the shortcut that it doesn't work out. I loved, I talked with Miss Otto last week, and she's still using the What's Your Story assignment. She's using it a little differently, but some of the assignments that we did, because Otto's now teaching GT English. And so some of the stuff we did back then, she's put it back into the GT program, and it's really it makes a difference in helping students to tell their story and have those conversations. Man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me. I can't wait. The podcast is going to launch in January. We're going to do one episode a week is my plan. And so you're the third one in the can. So somewhere probably end of January, 1st of February, I'll put this in the air. All right.
Let's go.